Hey y'all, it's Zach, the legal tech advisor here at Lawyerist. Today I'd like to talk to you about timekeeping and billing, specifically about the QuickBooks integration and sync that TimeSolv has. Recently, I sat down with Ron Reinhardt from TimeSolv, and he gave me a deep dive into the QuickBooks two-way sync. Have a listen, see what you think. Ron, thanks for joining me today. I know QuickBooks is kind of your baby on this, so you know a lot about it,
Yes.
and I think that a lot of people have some pretty good assumptions of TimeSolv's integration with QuickBooks, but I think it's really good to kind of dive into this because it really is a deep, um, very thoughtful integration and sync that's here. So yeah, let's learn a little bit more on this and kind of dive in.
All right. Fantastic. First things first, where we can find that sync tool. Once you're in your TimeSolv account, you go under Account into Integrations. Will be the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that comes up. Now we sync with both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop.
Okay.
Uh, so that way, no matter what they're using, we can sync with that.
Because I know a lot of attorneys still use that desktop option because they're comfortable with
Yes.
it.
Correct.
And online doesn't necessarily have all that, but some
Right.
of them are really digging into that online version. I think that's great.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. There's many accountants that will not give up their desktop version. Uh, and but there's many attorneys, especially the smaller groups, that they do like that flexibility, being able to get into their QuickBooks file wherever they are. So then the
Mm-hmm.
online version is very appealing. So just two different. We do have two different sync tools because they are still two different systems.
Mm-hmm.
Intuit does not make them identical, so we needed to tailor those sync tools accordingly.
Okay.
Uh, and just real quick, the desktop version, we get that sync tool over here on the left-hand side, online versions over on the right. Now I do have my account connected to a QuickBooks Online account. That's why I do have this nice green bar up there that says it's connected.
Okay.
Initially, there will be a button up there that says connect to QuickBooks. They do need to be an administrator to be able to do that. They will need to provide their QuickBooks credentials. That is then making that link or that connection between the two systems. Once
Okay.
that's done, then they can go ahead and install the sync tool. And that's what the blue button is for.
Okay.
Uh, if they are using desktop, we just recommend they do have that uh, up and running. So that way, when they launch the sync tool, it will be able to recognize that company file that's open and will make that connection.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. So have the QuickBooks file open,
Right.
then launch that installer slash sync tool, and
Correct.
it'll kind of find it for you. Great.
Right. Yes. And again, do need to be an admin, do need to be an admin in TimeSolv to get to this page. So that
Okay.
way, we know that security is taken care of. Uh, Once this has been installed, and then you will get the login screen for the sync tool, you do need to provide your TimeSolv credentials,
Mm-hmm.
and then it opens up. And I'm going to show you. Then this is the sync tool that will appear. Now I am using the desktop version of the sync tool versus
Mm-hmm.
with QuickBooks Online. There are a few differences, but this one, of course, has a few more options. Again, QuickBooks Desktop's been around a little bit longer, so
Just a little bit deeper. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Um, Ultimately, there is really just two tabs on this sync tool.
Okay.
Synchronize, where you actually do initiate that sync to pass the data, the settings to tell the tool what you want to sync.
Okay. So as an attorney, it's not syncing in real time. I have control over when I send that information over to QuickBooks.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That way
Yes.
I can feel a little bit more secure that if I'm putting information into TimeSolve and I go, ooh, I didn't want to do that, or I make a mistake, because I do that all the time. I don't have to transfer my mistakes.
Right.
Right.
Yes. So, I mean, great example. If you say run invoices and go, oh, wait, that wasn't quite right. I need to make
Mm-hmm.
some changes. So,
Mm-hmm.
they void that invoice in TimeSolv, they recreate it, with all the edits that should have been there. If they didn't sync, and now that invoice has been fixed,
Mm-hmm.
they run the sync. Well, then QuickBooks just sees that nice, clean, fixed invoice, and you never have to worry about doing any cleanup or anything
Yep.
in QuickBooks.
Yeah, that's much more comfortable, I think.
Yes.
Is it
Yeah,
the
we
same
do.
way with the online version as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We do recommend people do get into a schedule, so if they want to run
Mm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
daily, weekly, whatever, once a month, every 10 days, just pick a schedule. If you do forget when you ran it last, you can, resync past periods. That's fine. It won't duplicate things,
Okay.
so you
Okay.
don't run into any, issues there. Everybody starts out with syncing customers and jobs, and that would translate into clients and matters in TimeSolv.
Okay.
And now the nice thing is this is one of the areas that can be synced in either direction. Typically, you're going to sync from TimeSolv to QuickBooks, but you can sync QuickBooks to TimeSolv.
Okay. So if I'm running QuickBooks right now and I'm an attorney that is looking to bring TimeSolv into my tech stack, but I'm doing everything on QuickBooks, I'm not going to have to go in and hand duplicate all my
Right.
stuff in TimeSolv. I'll be able to sync those jobs and those customers from QuickBooks into TimeSolv and get that set up.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is really advantageous, especially for the people that are using QuickBooks exclusively. They want to get something that's easier to use,
Mm-hmm.
easier to enter time, easier to get those bills out, more flexible with the billing templates, all of those things that TimeSolv has to offer.
Right.
But they've been using QuickBooks for a while, and they have all their customers over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if they only have a handful or maybe a dozen of customers, well, then it's no big deal.
Sure.
More times than not, they've got a lot more than that. We're talking, hundreds or thousands of
Mm-hmm.
customers.
Mm-hmm.
And to have to recreate those by hand again is just way too daunting.
Of
But with the
course.
sync tool, yeah, the sync tool, then we set this up and say, oh, yes, now we want to sync from QuickBooks to TimeSolv. And then on that other tab, hit go and sit back and watch it happen,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of those customers get synced over. The jobs do as well. You do have the choice of syncing just the ones that are active or everything. And that's completely up to the firm how they want to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So if I went in, did a little bit of cleanup to my QuickBooks,
mhm,
and just said, these are the ones that I'm not worried about this. I have these in my QuickBooks file. If I need to get to them, they're 6 years old. I'm about to not have to worry about them anyway. I don't
right.
have to bring those into my time solve and get it
Correct.
all muddy. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of places, when they're using QuickBooks, very similar to in TimeSolv, once they're done with that client, then they're like, okay, I'm going to make them inactive.
Mm-hmm.
We did all the work, everything's been billed out, all the payments have come in, all that activity is finished. I'm going to make it inactive so then I don't have to keep looking at it in my customer and job list, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So that way, they do some management there. Then with the sync tool, they can decide, do they want to bring it all over or just the active ones that they're working on?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a nice feature. Again, if they only do the active, then it definitely speeds up the sync process because it's only looking at a portion,
Mm-hmm.
albeit probably a large portion, but maybe not all of everything that's in QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
Transferring all info, that just means all the contact information.
Okay.
So
Okay.
name, phone number, email, address, all of that.
And frankly, from my perspective, if I'm going to be running my invoices, sending my invoices, and using TimeSolv to its fullest potential, I'm probably going to want that information in TimeSolv more
Yes,
importantly than in QuickBooks even.
right. So again, for those people that are starting, they're moving data that is in QuickBooks, they want it in TimeSolv, they can start billing out of TimeSolv, then yes, they're going to definitely want this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For people that have a TimeSolv account, but now they want to start using QuickBooks, this becomes completely optional
Yeah. Okay.
because they have that billing information in TimeSolv where they're creating the invoices already. QuickBooks doesn't necessarily need that information. Sometimes they want it over there, and it's
Maybe.
sometimes beneficial, but then it becomes more optional.
Okay.
But if they do have all that information in QuickBooks, they need it into TimeSolv, then definitely, at least this first time, yes, go ahead and check the box because I want all that address information to come over.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, if they're syncing from QuickBooks into TimeSolv, especially that first time, you'll want those beginning balances to come over
Right.
because then that open AR amount is going to be the same in both systems.
Right.
And this is really the only time this bottom checkbox gets used is that initial sync from QuickBooks into TimeSolv.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not needed.
Right, because I've already got it over there. It's already made the sync. If TimeSolv is sending all that information, if I've been working for months where TimeSolv is sending all that information over there, then we don't need to transfer the open balances. We're just
Right.
transferring
Yeah.
transactions.
Right. And then, typically, moving forward, you're going to be syncing from TimeSolv to QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want the opening balances. And actually, this doesn't work the other way
Right.
from TimeSolv in because to transfer those AR balances, then we're going to start doing invoices and payments. And that's what the sync tool is for.
Okay, so I think that's important, at least for me, to kind of point out that right now, over on that left hand column, that tells us what we're syncing. So we have a good deal of
Correct.
control over what's being synced between TimeSolv and QuickBooks. So we don't have to import customer jobs, payments, invoices, expense entries, timing, all at the same time. We can have a little bit more
Right.
control over that. And
Yes.
okay, okay,
Yep. And many times, again, we're syncing from QuickBooks into TimeSolv for that initial
mm-hmm.
transfer. That many times this is all that we'll have turned on. Well, okay, this too.
With
This is all that we'll have turned on for that very first sync. We're
mm-hmm.
going to, okay, I'm going to save my settings and now come over here and sync
Right.
because I want to, populate TimeSolv initially with my customers and jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Get it up and running. Now people can use it. And then, okay, now let's talk about all of these other options that I can sync.
Right.
Um, so, and because even though this is not the top option, because the sync tool does start at the very top, works its way through all of these,
Mm,
moves on down, it only stops on the ones that are green.
agreed. Okay. Okay.
All the rest of them, it just skips over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like to start here because everybody syncs customers and jobs.
Right. You
Yeah.
may not be doing your bill payment. I would likely suggest that you do all your stuff in TimeSolv, but I mean, like you
Mhm.
may, for comfort purposes, be doing your bill payment outside of TimeSolv and just using QuickBooks, and therefore you don't need
Right.
vendors.
Right.
But again,
Exactly.
if you're going to use a platform as robust as TimeSolv, my
Mhm.
suggestion would be to go ahead and do as much as you can out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the examples, I'll, jump way down to payments
Mm-hmm.
for, and we'll say for QuickBooks online. Online makes it very easy for the firm to connect all of their bank accounts
Mm-hmm.
from the bank to TimeSolv or from QuickBooks. So that way, anything that hits the bank is automatically recorded in QuickBooks for the
Right.
online version.
Right.
QBO makes it super easy to set that up. and many firms do. So if that's the case, payments are hitting their bank, they're not going to want to sync payments from TimeSolv because that very likely is going to cause a duplicate.
Right. Right.
So that is an instance where, they may only sync invoices, not payments, or,
Hmm.
not the both of them. And that's why we do have them separated out. Now, many places, do sync both of these, but there are circumstances where you may not.
Hmm.
And
And so you want to be intentional about that on how it's
correct.
set up
And
into your
that's
workflow for your
why,
office.
yeah, that's why we do have all these different options on what you can sync and how to sync it.
Hmm.
So, and and it does tie into, that those free training sessions that we offer. This is one of those dedicated one-on-one training sessions that they'll meet with their account uh, manager and walk through these. How do they relate to their account? How does best served for how they have QuickBooks?
Hmm.
And then what should they be turning on? How do they want to turn it on? And be able to really tailor this sync tool to their specific practice.
Right. And I know a lot of attorneys, when they get a new tool, and I'm guilty of this all the time, you want to just turn it on and go, and just go as
Mm-hmm.
quick as possible. But
Yep.
again, with something like TimeSolv, it's solving a lot of problems for you. It's dealing with a lot of things in very specific ways. And so having that account rep and going through that specifically, and maybe even bringing your accountant in, or your accountants, or
Oh, definitely.
bookkeeper, um,
Hmm.
to talk about these things is crucially important to use
Yes.
this the correct way.
Yes. So some of the other areas that can be bi-directional, if you wanted your employees, again, if you have those in QuickBooks, those
Mm-hmm.
are then going to sync over into that professionals list in TimeSolv. And again,
Okay.
if you only have a couple of staff, I'll just go ahead and put them into TimeSolv.
Yeah.
That's no big deal. If it's a larger firm, this may be a time saver.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that way they can bring that information over and then they don't have to recreate all those people in TimeSolv.
Right. And just for people that aren't super familiar with TimeSolv right now, the professionals that what would that be in TimeSolv, and where would you use that category?
So the professionals or users
Mm-hmm.
in TimeSolv would be the people that, are logging in, tracking time, maybe additional administrators,
Mm-hmm.
uh, their billers, if they do have certain staff that just come in and, focus on getting invoices created and out the door.
Mm-hmm.
you know, if those staff then are in QuickBooks, then they can also be synced over. So those user accounts don't need to be recreated in TimeSolv.
Okay. And that seems like it, certainly for a larger company, that could save a lot of time.
Right. Exactly. Some of the other things that can be bi-directional, um, service items and other charge items. And those kind of dive a little bit deeper into the accounting side of things of
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks,
Mm-hmm.
but those tie into like service items tie into the task codes in TimeSolv when people are entering time. Other charge items tie into expense codes when people are entering expenses into TimeSolv.
Okay. Okay.
And and those are primarily used, while other charge items are used, especially for expenses, if people do want to sync expenses over. Now, these items can go both directions.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if they have those set up in QuickBooks now, and typically there's going to be more than just two or three of them,
Mm-hmm.
then they can all get synced over. Now, the interesting thing is that if I do choose QuickBooks, I get an extra option. So if I am new to TimeSolv, but I have all my data sitting over in QuickBooks. Well, I want my codes from QuickBooks to sync over. Those default codes that are in a new TimeSolv account, I don't want to use those. I don't want those muddying up the waters. So let's just go ahead and get rid of those. And I
Okay.
can then, oh, I do need to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so that way it's going to bring over my codes that I've been using, but then those other codes that TimeSolv puts in,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need those. Let's get them out of the way. So
Okay.
then I don't need to manually go in and delete those. The sync tool can actually do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So again,
Wow.
nice time saver,
Yeah.
really be able to, get your account up and running as quickly as possible.
Right. Again, very, very thoughtful. You guys have obviously done this many times, and something again that when you're setting this up, it is very helpful to go through these
Mm-hmm.
things, one by one
Yep.
and systematically.
Yep. And one quick thing about these, and again, this is kind of my accounting geek hat I'll throw on here for a second. Um, a difference between because this is, for QuickBooks Desktop, for
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks Online, you will only see service items because that is a difference between desktop and online.
Mm-hmm.
Online only has service items.
Okay.
Now, there'll be two sections in there where this one's only one, and then other charges only one.
Mm-hmm.
For the online version, you will see service items. There will be a section for time entries, a section for expense. So you'll still have the same functionality
Mm-hmm.
and the same options. It just will look a little bit different again because QuickBooks Desktop is different from QuickBooks Online.
And it's catered specifically to
Right,
the one that it's syncing with.
right. And that's why, again, we have those two options. So you just need to pick the one that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, the other thing too, and again, vendors, these have to do more with um, if you're reimbursing your staff.
Mm-hmm.
So then the sync tool can actually create vendors for your staff for those reimbursements. So that's what this is for.
Okay.
Uh, the expense entries are for any of those accounts payable items, so those client related vendor expenses,
Okay. Okay.
where there's a vendor that's involved.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're going to put that information into QuickBooks first because there's a vendor that needs to get paid. But then the sync tool actually runs it the opposite direction and syncs it from QuickBooks into TimeSolv.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So generally, like invoices and payments, those only go from TimeSolv to QuickBooks. Expenses, though, run QuickBooks to TimeSolv.
Okay. Because I'll be writing that expense out of QuickBooks, and then I want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that I'm documenting that in TimeSolv, because then I want to potentially create an invoice for that item as well.
Right. I want to get paid
Mhm.
back from my client. So, yes.
Right.
And that way, then you don't have to create that twice. You don't have to enter it
Mm-hmm.
in QuickBooks to pay the vendor and then go over and enter it into TimeSolv so you can get paid from your client. No, the sync tool can take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it does run in both through. And that one runs in the opposite direction.
Okay. Which allows me to use TimeSolv and QuickBooks in tandem, as
Yes.
opposed to saying, you know what, I'm going to do all my accounting in TimeSolv. Well, that's not necessarily what we want to do.
Right.
And
Right.
so I get to use QuickBooks for what I want to use QuickBooks for appropriately, paying those bills and cutting those checks and things. But then I'm
Right.
using TimeSolv for the things that it's really, really specific for, because as good of an accounting tool as QuickBooks is, and it can be used for a lot of things, it
Mm-hmm.
is not legal specific, and you
Right.
have to do a lot of finagling a lot of times to get
Yeah.
it to work for the intricacies of legal specific timekeeping and billing.
Right. Yeah. And that's where TimeSolv comes in, where we are tailored.
Mm-hmm.
We can make those invoices, look exactly the way they want,
Mm-hmm.
where in QuickBooks, you really get, one layout for everybody or maybe two, and as I remember, it's not the easiest thing to tailor those invoices. It
Mm-hmm.
it is work to adjust the layout.
Right. Well, and then you
And
also get to take advantage of things like the zero AR stuff from
right,
TimeSolv as well.
exactly. So I mean, in TimeSolve, where you have the multiple layouts, all the different templates,
Mm-hmm.
create as many of them as you want, assign those to clients as needed. So that way you are able to create those professional looking invoices in whatever format that you need, or even multiple formats.
Mm-hmm.
And then that data can just get passed over to QuickBooks. Um, so, your AR is the way that you need it to be. Everything's getting tracked. You don't need to enter it again.
Right.
So then your books are, kept up to date, and you're not stuck with a ton of, administrative overhead time that you have to deal with.
Right. Well, Ron, I know we could talk about this specifically, but certainly TimeSolve for a long time because of the features that are in here.
Yes,
But you know, specifically QuickBooks, this QuickBooks sync, we could dig into it deeper, and we will in a later video. So I really appreciate you kind of taking this overview look. I know it probably to some viewers or listeners, it does feel like a deep dive, and it was a little bit, but this is more of an overview of the QuickBooks sync because it really is intricate and specific to what the user needs. So I really appreciate you looking at this with me today, Ron.
my pleasure. No, and I look forward to next time when we can dive into this even further and explore more of the details and intricacies on how it can get set up to really tailor this to anyone's needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as there is more, you guys have a lot of information on your website on this. Y'all have some videos
We do.
diving into this as well at timesolv.com.
Hmm.
They can see videos, they can get more information on TimeSolv generally. They can connect with you guys and get demos of their own if they
Yes.
want. Is there anything else that they can grab on timesolv.com of note?
The other thing too, and I'm just going to minimize this real quick to get it
Mm-hmm.
out of the way. But when they're in their TimeSolve account,
Mm-hmm.
we do have online chat, which is the blue bubble down here
Okay.
in the lower corner. That way they can ask questions on wherever they are in TimeSolve to be able to get those answers right away. The other thing is the help link up by their name is a direct link out to our knowledge base,
Okay.
where it does have all of those how-to videos, all the articles, and also a link to our free weekly training sessions. And we do also do one-on-one trainings, which the QuickBooks would be a great example of that.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Absolutely.
so
Awesome. Well, Ron, thank you again for showing me around here and taking this dive into the QuickBooks sync and integration. Again, we will put a link to timesolve.com in the notes of this video. So again, I appreciate you being with me.
thank you very much.